How's it going, class? My name is Andrew Crotty, and today I'll be going over applications of security principles and presentation, reference CYB 515. Let's go ahead and get started. So security failures that we can always see in most attacks are going to be malware, which includes backdoors, file sharing sites, worms, viruses, and trojans. These are going to be done by any type of active threat groups, hack kitties, or any hacktivists or anyone else, maybe possibly insider threats that can provide these and get these into your systems. Another thing that we can always see is social engineering and phishing attacks. This can be done by luring interactions with possible victims or users, going through phishing scams or emails, providing clickbait to our users, trying to find something that entices them that would make them want to click in to get into somewhere. Some additional security failures, we have ransomware. These kind of attacks are types that where a hacker could get into a system, encrypt it for company sensitive data, and until a demand of ransom has been paid, the loss of operation of these systems would be ongoing until a clock or timer countdown happens to where a user's system would be completely locked out, to include any kind of data and losses. Some ways that that we just learned is make sure we have that backup or a security point that we can kind of get back to in case we'd have to refresh our systems. So additional security failures, we have ransom-based in AI machine learning. With the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning technologies in 2020, cyber threats of ransomware will become much more destructive. Ransomware assaults can become more effective, and these tools become more and more widely accessible. This would be something you'd probably see from more of your APT groups, or probably some well-known hackers. It'd be really hard to see this from like any young hacktivists or script kiddies. These would be more or less probably seen from your advanced threats, such as maybe Iranian groups, Russia, or maybe even groups known from Anonymous. Attacks on supply chains and third parties are also been seen throughout this year. Attacks to the third party and supply chains provide in reference to third party supply chains emphasizes significant in selecting reputable providers, which in a sense would be able to be targeted directly to make sure that they're actually getting a bang for a buck. Ideally, they had the money to provide these hackers with any type of ransom they would want in order to get their data back. Some additional failures we have are threats from internets, such as clickbait, IoTs, smart gadgets, which always are in part of the internet, making virtually anything easier to manage, easily and accessibly. These technologies we see more and more with a lot of the systems, with more or less hospitals having a lot of parts and pieces that are all connected to Bluetooth, the network and systems in order to all relay that information into one database. Some other attacks we could see are you have your DOS attacks, denial of service, type of cyber attack where attackers try to render computers or networks inaccessible and to its users to overwhelm the system. Friend, some of these legitimate requests have been completed. Denial of services are usually made by overloading a target system or resources with unnecessary requests. Internal attacks. Personnel is one of the most persistent cybersecurity threats and factors that we see. This could be from a disgruntled employee. That's why it's always important to do correct and a quick offboarding when releasing employees, for whether it could be a negative termination or even if they're just moving on to bigger and better things. We want to make sure that we're disabling those accounts, making sure that we're doing a good full read off, and making sure we're kind of passing off any kind of duties and stuff, that we have that stuff taken care of, so that if there was any type of possible 0-day or internal attack that could happen, or a logic bomb, we'd be able to assess that and make sure we get that taken care of. So we have the principles of the cybersecurity CIA triad. According to Wazowski 2019, confidentiality, integrity, and availability are stood for the CIA. The CIA triad is a well-known and well-respected framework for developing security systems and policies and protecting against system failures. These are used to identify vulnerabilities as well as strategies for solving issues and developing practical solutions. This distinction is helpful since it aids security teams in evaluating many approaches that may be used to address each issue. So keep in mind our end users aren't always going to know what's wrong with the computer, and sometimes we need to take into account and kind of go into a good deep dive to find those issues to fix it. Recommended designs of principle needed for work remote. So this is where COVID has really kind of amped up the availability for our employees to work remotely. Now, as you can see on some of these 12 choices here, it gives kind of like the availability of what is needed to work remote and some things and some challenges that some of our users would see. If one person is remote, everyone is remote. That's one aspect where if one employee decides to work remote, it'd be probably advantageous to allow all employees to work remote, depending on duties as well as need for being inside a facility. Having to make sure that they have a good equal and accountability of their work, and understanding that working remote can be a reward and not always a necessity that employees need to have. So keeping that in mind, we'll go over the next few things that require a good working remote place for our end users. So time and place, you'll have trouble managing your time. So keep in mind when we're working from home, we're going to have additional distractions and duties. We'll have that honey-do list, might be having to watch the kids, run a quick errand. But this will definitely be a good test of multitasking capabilities and still making sure we're keeping with our deadlines and timelines for no later than dates when it comes to our workloads. So always still kind of maybe maintaining a good work schedule and annotating a planner would also keep that in mind of helping keeping your employees on time with time and place. Keeping motivated. So ideally different things motivate different workers. Some workers are motivated by having that ability to work remotely, and some others rather be inside an office. Some things to keep in mind are most millennials these days are, I think, 68%. If we can go back to our slide right here, we have 68 of millennials say that they're interested in prospective employees that would surge if they could work from home. Probably one is just availability and flexibility of having to kind of quickly go to the gym or finish your workday early and kind of just clock out as long as the work is done and completed. Other things to kind of keep in mind is while some employees may enjoy that, you can also use that as a disciplinary action as well of having a hybrid work schedule. Making sure that we can maintain that and ensure that if the team understands that they can't meet those expectations, that we would have them work inside the office. But every employee can be differently motivated, and working remotely can definitely be used as one of those as such. So some risks that we have from our users working remote. We have some basic things as Wi-Fi security, hacking risks, locations of where they're working, so maybe a coffee shop, using personal devices if they're not on a MDM plan or a BYOD from the company. Can always increase those mobile risk securities of any kind of leakage of PII and additional work issues. Maintaining or setting up a VPN policy. That's one thing that would at least allow mobile workers, if they are using VPNs, to at 46% of enterprises were confident that mobile workers were using a VPN. That's not always the case. So always having those kind of policies in place allow auditing and editing to make sure that those are being set in stone, to make sure that we're protecting that kind of network and data if we're working remote. So it's always important just to keep ensure that if good security policies aren't set in place, it allows the flexibility of error from our end users, not having that kind of guidance to go off of. Safety tips for remote work. Ideally, maintaining good InfoSec. The grandma test or the newspaper test was always one thing that was mentioned. Like if you don't want to post on social media, and if you'd be worried that it'd be seen on a newspaper, probably not to post it. One thing that some security managers would possibly look into doing is setting up a weekly tips and tricks of remote working, emailing your end users of kind of safe ways to secure their systems, and allowing different vulnerabilities and keeping those vulnerabilities up to date of like, hey, this happened, make sure you're doing software updates, and ensuring that your users are putting in tickets in a relatively fast and quick manner. Because no matter what, IT will still be needed to ensure no matter where these flags or tickets come from, that we're quickly addressing those from any system to make sure that our networks are safe, secure, and all operating. Well, this will conclude my video and my PowerPoint, so I really appreciate your time, Here are a few of the references I used, and go ahead and